As well loved as Peter Jackson's adaptation of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is, it's obvious to anyone who's read the books that Jackson took a lot of liberties with the films. A lot of book readers have many gripes with the inaccuracies and misrepresentations, and two of the biggest victims of these out of the Fellowship characters are Merry and Pippin. I guess you could say they're also the smallest victims because, you know, hobbits. Never mind. In the books, Merry and Pippin are upper-class young hobbits from well-known families, and they're almost akin to Shire princes. The two of them are still very close friends, and Merry is older and more mature than Pippin, almost like a mentor. But these two in the books are noticeably more mature and capable characters from the very start. Merry and Pippin in the books aren't just reckless youth trying to cause trouble. They actually help Frodo manage his affairs with his home and estate after Bilbo's departure. Merry knows his way around maps and is very well read. Pippin, who takes things a bit more lightly, is quick-witted. They're both quite smart and experienced by Shire standards, but their exposure to the outside world is their coming-of-age catalyst. Upon their return, they've truly matured into their own hobbits. Movie Merry and Pippin, on the other hand, are shown at the start to be incredibly silly. Their first appearance is them hunting down the biggest, baddest fireworks in Gandalf's stash and setting it off. For a majority of the trilogy films, these two are used as comic relief. Despite that, I'm not mad. I love both book and movie version, and not just because Billy Boyd's and Dominic Monaghan's performances were incredible, but because while Jackson's depiction of Merry and Pippin diminished them into simpler, somewhat dumber versions of themselves, he allowed their character arcs to exemplify something unique from everyone else: subtle heroism. The Lord of the Rings is an epic tale of good versus evil, heroes versus monsters. It's a story of a great war. And as such, most of the heroic characters in Lord of the Rings are heroes through combat and battle. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are all lethal hunters. Boromir was obviously a great warrior. Gandalf can wield a sword and staff impressively well for an old man. And of course you have Theoden and the Rohirrim, Gondor, Faramir, their soldiers, and even Haldir. The list goes on. Nearly every character and side character finds their moment to shine in battle, with the hobbits being the main exception. Now let it be said that in the books, the hobbits aren't completely useless with a sword. Merry even gets some damage in with the Uruk-hai at Amon Hen. But in the movie, the difference in combat ability is stark. And even by the end of it, the hobbits still aren't terribly impressive with a sword, but at least they can sort of hold their own without dying. What then did the hobbits do to deserve this scene?
You bow to no one.
The answer is obvious with Frodo and Sam. They destroyed the damn ring. But what about Merry and Pippin? Alright, let's start from the top of movie Merry and Pippin. Frodo and Sam bump into them stealing from Farmer Maggot's crop. From then on, it appears that Merry and Pippin get roped into the fray because all of a sudden they're being pursued by scary cloaked riders. It's not safe for Merry and Pippin to head back at this point. And so, by complete accident and in the midst of mischief, their journey begins. In the books, Merry and Pippin don't exactly know what they're getting into, but they guess enough about Frodo and the ring to have a hunch that their close friend is headed into danger, and they want to accompany him. Their motivation is primarily loyalty, but they're not as uninformed in the books as they are in the movies. The movies make these two seem more foolish, but it gives Merry and Pippin a more exaggerated starting point for their character development. Honestly, they don't do a whole lot throughout the Fellowship of the Ring movie. Merry knows his way around the river, but Pippin gets drunk and slips up about Frodo's true identity. When they reach Weathertop, they, along with Sam, light a fire to eat, making them very easy for the Nazgul to find. Then, at the Council of Elrond, they just rush in because it seems hype, and Pippin's just very silly about the entire thing, again, as comic relief. And that's not even counting the Fool of a Took yet. You know, when Pippin knocks down an entire chest down the well in Moria and wakes up all the goblins in there.
Fool of a took.
Side note, this bit in the books isn't as disastrous, but Pippin was still very foolish, so thankfully that's relatively consistent. Anyway, these two are pretty much dead weight for most of the Fellowship's first leg of the journey, but they get a very key moment at the end of the first film. In the woods near Rewrote, Frodo is threatened by Boromir. He decides to separate from the Fellowship and go at it alone. Merry and Pippin find him in the woods. At first, they beckon Frodo to come to them. Then Merry sees in his eyes that that Frodo intends to do the exact opposite. Pippin acts first, unwilling to let Frodo go alone, but Merry quickly realizes that Frodo needs a clear path of escape, and they can provide that. He and Pippin draw the attention of the Uruk-hai to lead them away from Frodo. And at that moment, Merry and Pippin were the two small things standing between Frodo and Saruman's army. In the book, Merry and Pippin didn't deliberately try to distract the Uruk-hai. In fact, they had every intention to accompany Frodo on the mission, but they got captured before they could get very far. Again, very loyal friends, but not really a spotlight moment like what the movie gave them. Two Towers starts off with Merry and Pippin in the Uruk-hai's captivity. Both the film and the books have them weak, confused, but barely conscious enough to search for a way out of the situation. One thing the book highlights is that Pippin is the first to guess that the Uruk-hai are looking for the ring. He taunts Grishnak with Gollum sounds to get his attention with it, and Merry starts to play along. This was likely a survival tactic more than anything to keep them from getting killed off right away, but it's still a clever strategy. Of course, though, their main role in the Two Towers was to accompany the Ents to march on Isengard. Now, this might surprise you non-book readers, but originally, Merry and Pippin had little to do with the Ents' decision. They had lengthy exchanges with Treebeard about their experience with the Uruk-hai, but when it came to the Ent moot, the Ents almost unanimously concluded by themselves that they'd had enough of Saruman. Merry's down to fight, and Pippin, remembering what they went through with the Uruk-hai, says he's happy to see Saruman defeated. That is a wild contrast to the films, and I honestly like what Peter Jackson does with the Ent dynamic. Jackson makes the Ents complacent and inert. They decide that they're not being affected enough by Saruman to take action. And this is something a lot of people feel, that unless something directly affects them, it's not their problem. But Merry tries to tell them otherwise. You're part of this world, he says, so if there's an opportunity to fight for what's right and make a difference, even if it's for someone else, why not? But ultimately, in the film, the Ents deny his motion. Pippin, however, is clever. He finds another way to change Treebeard's mind by bringing him to the site of Saruman's gratuitous logging and making Treebeard see for himself the horrors wrought upon his forest. The effect is immediate. Treebeard calls the Ents. I really love this subplot because it's a great way of showing how hobbits, these literal small folk, can make such a big difference. And here, they achieve that by appealing to the bigger folks that can physically make the big differences. Gandalf literally says their coming was like the falling of small stones that starts an avalanche in the mountains. And from here, the films tell us that Merry and Pippin are heroes behind the scenes, guiding larger forces, and are themselves a force to be reckoned with. Unfortunately, these two aren't inseparable for long. Pippin has yet another foolish moment, gazing into the Palantir. Thankfully, he has his saving graces. He doesn't tell Sauron anything about the ring, and when Gandalf questions him about the incident,
A fool, but an honest fool he remains.
Still, Gandalf has to bring Pippin with him to Gondor, and for the first time in the trilogy films, Merry and Pippin are ripped apart. In the books, this is when Merry and Pippin truly mature, Pippin especially being parted from his mentor bestie. In Gondor, Pippin experiences the life of a soldier for the first time, waking up early, standing on duty, and having small food rations. He wishes for the comforts of home. But then, he finds comfort in his loyalty towards Faramir. He bonds with a Gondor soldier and his son. He pushes back against Denethor to save Faramir, and he takes care of Merry after the battle. Pippin grows up. The films allow Pippin to do this too, but with bigger moments. The earlier one in the film being the lighting of the beacons. Now this might be very surprising for non-book readers, because this was one of the best scenes in the film, but this just didn't happen in the books. Like, yeah, the beacons were lit, but they were lit by Denethor even before Pippin and Gandalf arrived at Minas Tirith. By transferring this action over to Pippin, the films depicted Denethor as less competent, and gave Pippin another moment in the spotlight. Over in Rohan, I think Merry's heroic deeds came as displays of loyalty. First to Theoden by offering his sword. In the book, Merry even says that Theoden was like a father to him at times, but in the film, his loyalty to Éowyn particularly shines through. Originally, Tolkien wrote Éowyn to call herself Durnhelm while disguised as one of the Rohirrim. Merry didn't know who Durnhelm was, but because Durnhelm helped Merry join the fight despite Theoden wanting Merry to stay behind, Merry tagged tagged along with Durnhelm. The films tell a different story. Here, it's clear to both us and Merry that it's Éowyn who scoops up Merry. Merry's thrilled, says, "My lady." I mean, who wouldn't at that point? And he knows without a doubt that he and Éowyn are in this together. Two people who definitely aren't supposed to be fighting, but will do so anyway. While they ride to Gondor, Merry keeps Éowyn's identity under wraps. He keeps positive. And on Pelennor Fields, he helps Éowyn by steering the horse. And even in the books, Éowyn likely wouldn't have been able to slay the Witch King without Merry stabbing him first. In Return of the King, Merry and Pippin are given room to grow individually in their time apart from each other. They aren't necessarily the ones who do the most in a given situation, but they're definitely couldn't have done it without them. It's almost like how Frodo couldn't have done it without Sam, but to a more subtle degree. Merry and Pippin's roles are still incredibly important, yet would probably be overlooked by a lot of people. But instead of overlooking them, the films applaud them. So let's return to this scene. In the books, this doesn't happen. At least not on as grand a scale anyway. Merry and Pippin receive their accolades, but it's Frodo and Sam that Aragorn actually publicly bows to. Which again makes sense because they're the ones who destroy the damn ring. But there's no denying the impact of how the movie does it. From the start of the first film, the hobbits are our first protagonists. They're relatable characters. Young people who are used to the comforts of home and know nothing of war. Everyone else they meet has known war in some capacity. Everyone else is good at fighting because they were born into a war era. But the hobbits, until the events of Lord of the Rings, have their innocence intact. I think the films capture the spirit of the hobbits' book arc by still having them grow up and lose their innocence to the horrors of war. And more than that, the films give Merry and Pippin chances to show their wit, loyalty, bravery, and courage despite their naivety about the world. When Aragorn and all of Gondor bow to all four hobbits, not just Frodo and Sam, it's to remind us how far all of them have come in proving themselves. All of them, even Merry and Pippin, achieved things they probably never imagined they could. And while they lacked remarkable skill in battle, they were still remarkably capable of heroic deeds worthy of recognition, even from a king.